Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Chapita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidyat Ravindam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, if I remember correctly, we started the 6th chapter last week. We finished the very short 5th chapter, which was an explanation of the 4 Mahavakyas. Does anyone remember what verse we're on?
We're starting on number 14.
Number 14 in chapter 6. Got it?
Yeah.
All right, help us out.
Paramatma Vasheshopi Tatsatya Tvavinishchayah Na Jagat Vismriti Vismritir No Chet Jivan Muktir Sambhavet. The Supreme Self alone remains also means a conviction about its reality and not non-perceiving of the world. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as liberation in life.
Yes. So, what Vidyaranya is talking about is a very possible misunderstanding that somehow these notions of the destruction of the mind, the destruction of the visible universe, means their non-apprehension. If that were true, then deep sleep would be the highest state, and it's not. Now, I think the best way to summarize this is to talk about some of the various kinds of samadhis that we talk about in the Vedanta tradition. If you go into the Raja Yoga tradition, you'll get a little bit different understanding of it. The first samadhi is what we call a jada samadhi. Jada means inert. This is for the person who still has vasana in the mind. And then through pranayama and through these various bandhas is able to temporarily stop the mind. The thinking is gone. But the experience is, I, the individual, know blank. Now you can fool yourself with this, because if you hyperventilate when you're doing the pranayama, you just make yourself dizzy. That's not samadhi. So that doesn't do anything to free us. Why? What holds the mind in place is vasana. Review. Vasana are the unconscious impressions left in the mind as the result of previously performed egoistic actions, meaning they have I-ness and minus. When I have an experience, then I engage in chintya, after the fact rumination over the event. Gee, that was really wonderful. I want to do that again. Or, that was terrible. I don't ever want to do that again. Or, oh, this is really wonderful right now. I hope it never goes away. Some form of rumination. This leaves impressions in the unconscious. Now, impressions, as a rule, are not really problematic. We use the word sanskara. I think in the Goenka tradition, they use sankara. Little bit different meaning. For example, I know that's a coffee table. Knowing it's a coffee table doesn't make me suffer. So impressions in general are not problematic. We get spiritual sanskaras, which are quite beneficial. But a vasana is a subset. And it has a two very special powers. The first is what we call a varana shakti or avriti, meaning in my mind, I have the non-apprehension of my essential nature. Even though it's the most obvious, the most real, the most present thing about me, somehow my mind says, I don't know who I am. And then we have what we call the Ch.6, projecting power. First thing the mind projects is jiva bhavana, the attitude or the feeling that I'm a person. I'm superimposing upon the self the qualities of the not self. Along with that is the feeling that the world is out there and separate, and I need to struggle. All that is avarana shakti, vikshepa shakti. This is the problem. This is the problem. And we remove the vasanas, abhyasa vairagyacha, by practice and by renunciation. Renouncing my attachment to all sensory experiences, positive and negative, and renouncing over and over again my identification with any sense of self. How do I know if I have vasana going on? What's the answer? Real simple.
Lose apprehension of yourself.
Say louder so they can hear.
You lose apprehension of yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm a person. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. So I may have glimpses of my self nature, and it comes back. So that leads us to the first stage of samadhi, as Shankara talks about it, which is savikalpa samadhi. Sa means with, a vikalpa is a movement or a perturbation in the mind. Sama means equal, di means mind. So the absolute quiescence of the mind. While there's still at times some glimmerings of a personal sense of self and a perception of the world. This is when we keep tuning up the mind. And in moments the veil may part, and you see, oh, there's nobody there. The world is just transparent. But ignorance may come back. And when all the vasana has been annihilated, the personal sense of self is gone. It does not return. And this we call nirvikalpa samadhi. In that state, the personal sense of self is gone. While we're in it, the world is not available. But you are there. Then when the mind returns, it remembers that experience, the experience of its own disappearance. And it's never the same again. Nirvikalpa samadhi is not the highest state. Leave me alone, I want to be in samadhi. No. The highest state is what we call sahaja samadhi. Sahaja means natural or continuous. Sahaja samadhi is not a mind state. It's deep knowledge where I know effortlessly all the time. Not a person, not that grounded being. Brahman. And this world, though very vivid, only arises like a dream. Don't sweat the small stuff, it's all small stuff. So what Vidyaranya is saying, that knowledge does not mean the non-apprehension of the world. It means I see the world for what it is. Scriptures give us two classic analogies: snake in the rope, mirage waters in the desert. Snake in the rope is like nirvikalpa samadhi. When I apprehend the rope, the snake is not available for apprehension. Oh God, where did the snake go? Well, it never was really there. So also in samadhi, gone, world gone, person gone. But mirage waters in the desert. Before knowledge dawns, my perception is water and my knowledge is water. When I realize it's a mirage, it still looks like water. But my knowledge is heat waves off the sand. So also in sahaja samadhi, the world is still seen, but I no longer take it as inherently concrete, substantive, and separate from me. I no longer believe in personal sense of self. I don't believe my mind. Only aham is real. All right, that's pretty short understanding of all that stuff. Any thoughts or questions about it? So practically speaking, what's the practice that's implied? If I think I'm a person, I've got work to do. My mind will tell me if the world is upsetting me, what I need to do is beat the world into submission. So, i.e., feel okay. Yoga says if I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the klesha, the affliction. I'm the one with the attachment. I'm the one with the expectation. I'm the one with the control issue. And most importantly, I'm the one with the personal identification. Get out. Stop it. Get out. Drop the ball. Yeah, but what about the world and solving all those problems? You have to make your abidance in the self more important than the world. The world's going to keep going on. It doesn't need your ego or mine. Very important point. All right, next verse.
Paroksha cha paroksheti vidya dvedha vicharja tatra paroksha vidyapto vicharogyam samapyate. The knowledge arising from discrimination is of two kinds, indirect and direct. This process of discrimination ends in the achievement of the direct knowledge.
Yes. So we have these two technical terms. Paroksha jnanam, which means indirect knowledge, and aparoksha jnana, direct experience. So we gain indirect knowledge, meaning understanding from study of the scriptures, from the teacher. Some of us, you get, how does Shankara say it? You get a little worldly satisfaction from having a deep intellectual understanding of the scripture. But Vidyaranya says, don't settle for just understanding. Renounce attachments to the world. Renounce personal sense of self. Keep the mind intensely introverted. Don't believe your mind. Keep inquiring. Koham, who am I? What's my essential nature? Or as the Zen people say, what was your face before your mother's birth? Keep at it. Every one of the attachments and identifications are gone. Now, for some people, samadhi is big deal. Kawang, and then you know it. Oh. But I have come to see that for others, it can be just a very subtle shift. So listen carefully. Don't make samadhi ago. You can get all worked up trying to have nirvikalpa samadhi. Practice savikalpa samadhi. Keep tuning up the mind. Keep tuning up the mind. And renounce, renounce, renounce. Make sthita prajna your goal. Steady wisdom. Do you know who you are? Under all conditions. Let samadhi sneak up on you from behind. There are Vedantins who say samadhi is not necessary. And you have a long life. Any thoughts? Any questions? Next verse.
अस्ति ब्रह्मेति चेद्वेद परोक्षज्ञानम् एव तत् अहं ब्रह्मेति चेद्वेदत् साक्षात्कार स उच्यते. The knowledge that Brahman is indirect. The knowledge that I am Brahman is direct.
Oh, I love it. Beautiful shortcut. So I know that Brahman is omniscient, omnipotent, eternal. Brahman is the same as the self. I say so frequently. Do not think of the self as some external idea. What do you think about the self? I don't know. What do you think about the self? Is it the self is something that's floating around up here? We start with our direct experience. In old-timey days, I would hold up the book. Who sees the book? Now I usually use my phone. Who sees the phone? I do. That's yourself. You do not lack the experience of the self. What you lack is a clear apprehension of what it is. Withdraw your attention from everything that is not self and see what remains. Negate everything that is negatable. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
तत्साक्षात्कारसिद्ध्यर्थ आत्मतत्त्वं विविच्यते येनायं सर्वसंसारात् सद्य एव विमुच्यते. We now consider the nature of the self with a view to having its direct experience, through which the jiva is immediately liberated from all worldly fetters.
Yes. So now he's going to consider how we can come into this direct experience. The result being, I no longer think I'm a person with fetters, being bound by this. Instead, I have the direct, constant experience. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. I am Atma Brahman. This self is not a stinking body. It's Brahman. Next verse.
कूटस्थो ब्रह्मजीवेशा वित्येवं चित्ततुर्विधा घटाकाशम् अहाकाशो जलाकाशाभ्रसे यथा. The self as consciousness absolute is spoken of as kutastha.
Kutastha, isn't it?
Kutastha, yes. Kutastha Brahman Jiva, and Ishvara. Just as, for instance, Akasha ether is called part Akasha, all embracing Akasha, Akasha conditioned by water, and Akasha conditioned by a cloud.
Yes. So I've been mispronouncing it for years. It's not Kutusta, it's Kutasta.
Yeah.
So Kuta can be either an anvil or a mountain. Statishtati means to be established. So it is a term that's borrowed from Gita. Kutasta means something that is immovable. Both images are cool. So if you think of an anvil and you go to the farrier or the blacksmith and they're going to fit horseshoes or they're going to make a sword or a knife, they'll take the hot steel and then they shape the steel. So it moves and gets shaped, but the anvil is still established. Or you can think about a mountain. All the weather changes around the mountain, but the mountain is enormous and still. So that's the term he's going to be using, Kutasta. But it also means Brahman. It means Purusha, the Supreme Spirit. It means Atma, or Chidakasha, the space of pure awareness. Mandukya calls it Avyapadesha. You can know it, but you can't talk about it. Words fall short. But for this section, we'll use the term Kutasta. So he compares it to Akasha, space. So there's space in a pot. There's space in a room. There's space of the sky. There's space inside the cloud. There's space in the symbol. Now, whenever we talk about various vessels and space, we can just use the water glass here. Water glass space, outside is room space. Now, if I move the water glass, does space move? Oh. Wait a minute, come back. I don't have to put the space back in the water glass. In fact, there's no real relationship between the water glass and space. Space is simply kutasta, immovable, always there. It's the glass that moves in the space. Here's another cool thing. I have water inside the glass. Does the water get rid of the space? Still space in the glass. The water is in the space in the glass. I haven't pushed the space out. Oh, it's overflowing the glass. No. The air, yeah, that's space. And of course, if the glass is dirty, what happens to the space? Nothing. If the glass gets broken, what happens to the space? Likewise, the gata, the pot called Jim's body, and another gata called Punit's body. Whatever happens to those pots the space. Me never gets touched. So think, if you pull out a photo album and you look at photos of yourself as a child, 3 feet tall. Then you went through adolescence, shot up like a weed. Then you got into your 30s or 40s and you began to fill out. Then you got into your 50s, 60s, 70s, and then it all started to sag. That pot undergoes a lot of changes. But you are still you. And if at any time you slow down enough, introvert the attentive faculty, and really investigate this self, it's always Utastha, established like a mountain, unmoving. Any thoughts? Next verse.
घटावच्छिन्नखे नीरं यतत्र प्रतिबिम्बिवत् साभ्रंशक्त्र आकाशो जलाकाश उदीर्यते. The sky with clouds and stars reflected in water, contained in a pot which encloses space, is known as akasha in water.
Yes, so this is one of Vidyaranya's most brilliant images. So imagine our water pots that we talk about, that the Malayalis get and put there. But at this time, it's daytime. And it's a clear, a beautiful day, but there are clouds in the sky. So I look into the pot. Ooh, there's a sky in the pot. There are clouds in the pot. It is Akasha Jaya. Pratibimba. It is the reflection, the shadow of the sky, the space in the pot, in the water in the pot. So also, you've seen me pull out the little hand mirror, and I hold it up and I shine it around, shine it in people's faces. Is there a light in the mirror or not? Well, kind of yeah, kind of no. I don't see any light, but it's shining when it's reflected. So also, the ego, ahamkara, is the reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought. That's why it seems like I am happy, I am sad, I am smart, I am stupid, I am sick, I am well, etc. This is the jiva. This is the ego. This is the personal sense of self, goes by many, many, many names. But it's pratibimba. It's like the reflection in a mirror. It is a function in the subtle intellect, the vijnana maya kosha. and you watch it rise and fall, thicken and thin. Your mind may say, oh, I'm such a terrible person. I did blah, 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 blah. Did you know that thought? Yes. Oh, my friend forgave me. I feel so much better about myself now. Do you see that thought? Yes. You are neither thought. You're the one who knows those thoughts. That's a reflected self, not a real self. Any thoughts? Next verse.
महाकाशस्य मध्ये यत् मेघमण्डलमीक्षते प्रतिबिम्बतया तत्र मेघाकाशो जले स्थितः. The sky reflected in water particles forming a cloud suspended in space is known as akasha in a cloud.
So the assumption here is a cloud is water vapor. It's made up of little droplets. So just like when you see space reflected in the water in a jar, the space, the sky is reflected in each one of those little drops in the cloud. If you came up in a balloon, you could have like a telescopic microscope. I don't know, I just made that up. You could look at the drop, you could see the sky reflected in a drop. Going on.
Is there a practice implied in these verses?
Let's keep going. We'll see. Yes, the practice is very simple. Discriminate between the ahankara and aham, between jiva bhavana and I approach it a little bit more simplistically. If you think you're a person, you're deluded. Mm-hmm. To be able to see the difference between this reflected self, this thoughted self, and what's really self. Does that make it a little easier, clearer?
Yeah.
Okay. Good question. Next one. Next verse.
Medhancha rupamuddakam तुषारात्कार संस्थितं तत्र खप्रतिबिम्बोऽयं निरत्वादनुमीयते. As a cloud is composed of a water in a particular state, it is therefore reasonable to assume the existence of the reflection of akasha in a cloud.
Yes, so he just goes on with the metaphor. So just like there may be a billion little reflections of the sky in an enormous cloud, so there are a billion little reflections of Brahman in the minds of all the people. No different.
So is the analogy here that the water has reflective properties just like consciousness has reflective properties? And
well, I don't know why I would say consciousness has reflective property. What he's saying, the water in the sky reflects in the same way as the water in the jar. And that the mind, the vijnana maya kosha, has it's until you have some moments where you see the nothingness of your self-nature, when you first start the practice. Sometimes when I'll work subject-object discrimination in the beginning class, the vast majority of people, it doesn't work. That sense of personal self is too solid. Does that make sense? So for them, I am Jim. That's what I am. how do I get out of this feeling? I need to change. I have to change me. There's a me there. That's who I am. If you talk with your friends who are in the secular world, all of them will have that experience. And for them, it's very, very real. Isn't that your experience?
Yep.
If you were to say to them, oh, I'm not a person, I'm in the empty space of consciousness, what have you been smoking? You just keep your mouth shut. I can remember I said to a friend, I have no desires. Who do you think you are? You know, that was the biggest joke in the world. But if you've been there, it's all different. I don't know if that's helpful.
Mhm.
Going on.
अधिष्ठानतया देह द्वयावच्छिन्न चेतनः कूटवान्नी विकारेण स्थितत कूटस्थ उच्यते. The consciousness which is conditioned by the gross and subtle bodies on which they are superimposed and which knows no change is known as kutastha.
Yes. So the consciousness, me, myself, is known as kutastha, meaning the immovable, that which is established as immovable, like a mountain. And then the bodies, the conditionings are superimposed on it. Now listen carefully. The self doesn't do the superimposition. It is in the mind. Both bondage and liberation occur in the mind. The self just watches. The self is never really bound. Just like, no matter how vivid the nightmare is, how real it seems, when I wake up, oh, yes, it was a real experience with a small R, but it never really happened to me. I'm still in my bed. So also, the dream of Jiva Bhavana, of Ahankara, of Sansara, of the Karma Chakra, goes by many names. The Jagat, just that. But you, self, always safe, always kutastha. Next verse.
कूटस्थे कल्पिता बुद्धि तत्रचित् प्रतिबिम्बकः प्राणानां धारणा जीव संसारेण सज उच्यते. On the kutastha is superimposed by the imagination of the intellect, buddhi. The reflection of kutastha in the intellect is animated by vitality and is called the jiva.
Yeah.
It is subject to transmigration.
So, in my subtle intellect, Shankara will use the term karta, the sense of agency, a doer. What is that karta, that doer, do? It superimposes on the self all the various experience qualities of the not self and coordinates them using memory and allows this fake self, this phony self, this shadow self to seemingly arise. For example, did you have breakfast this morning, Puneet?
I skipped breakfast.
You skipped breakfast. Did you have lunch?
Mhm.
Did I have breakfast?
I don't know.
Actually, I had a bagel, but I skipped lunch. So you know what happened to you. Did you get out of the house or did you spend the whole day inside today?
I was at home.
Yeah, I got out to Piedmont Avenue and stuff like that. So I, Jim, remember going across the street, getting on the bus, heading up to Piedmont Avenue, blah, 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 blah. I came back, I watched the news, I did the dishes. What I is it that's doing all that? That's the agent, that's the cartel. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not evil. It's just not me. Is that making sense? So it's a function in the subtle intellect that coordinates all the data. Now, see, this is my opinion. I think there are people for whom that ahankriti is broken. I have a dear friend that I know from AA, and he's got a fascinating sponsee. This sponsee was a chronic crystal meth addict. So, he's got a little bit of brain damage probably. But he hears voices. There are entities which keep telling him to do things. They're not very nice. And it's almost impossible to convince this person, no, you're hallucinating. That's drug-induced psychosis. His ahankriti is broken. Part of it's splintered out, and it sounds like it's coming from the outside instead of the running inner dialogue. Oh golly, did I turn the stove off today? And let's see, I need to call so and so tomorrow. Those kind of thoughts we have. They're not problematic, but that's just your inner voice. Or the one that I think is very interesting is a blackout drinker. Any of you ever had a blackout? You kept acting in the world, talking with people, going through experiences, and no memory of it. And as many blackout drinkers have happened, all of a sudden, like a different personality emerges. You could be doing things you're ashamed of or would never do in a sober state. You ever had that experience? That's messing with this karta, this agent. It can be terrifying to be a blackout drinker. Come to and you don't know how you got there, what you did who with, who you did what with. You know what I mean. Then there's what I think is the most fascinating, the phenomenon of multiple personalities. Some of them are aware of others, some of them are not. David and Mark, did either of you do a turn in psych med about and study things like multiple personalities?
Yeah, probably. I did.
Yes, I did too, Joe.
Pardon me?
We both
I
did
did
turns in psychiatric treatment.
Yeah. But these things are real. They really exist. And we don't know necessarily what causes them, But from the standpoint of a yogi, the ahankara is busted. So you don't have the sense of being an integrated personality. So the personality is not bad. It's just not you. It's a reflection. It's pratibimba, which is why I tend to use the term jiva bhavana, the feeling I'm a person, the attitude that I'm a person. It's like the you in the dream. When you have a dream, I had the weirdest dream this morning. I was in this club, and then when I got outside, it was already daylight. So I'd been in this club, all night long. And I was on Castro Street in the city, walking down Castro Street by Cliff's Hardware. And there were all these people that I thought were sleeping on the sidewalk. And there was construction stuff there. And they looked like they were covered in concrete dust. And then someone said to me, "Oh no, Jim, they're dead." And then I woke up. Weird dream. Probably listening to the news too much, Hamas and Gaza stuff. But my mind created that dream Jim. I wasn't fat. I could see perfectly. I didn't huff and puff walking long distances. But it was one thing my mind created. So also, the sense that I'm a person in the waking state is no different. It's created by the mind. That's what he's driving at. Is this clear to people? Any thoughts on it? All right, next verse. Oh, before we leave it. Once you see you are not that ahankara, it changes. Because its suffering is rooted in its belief that it's real. And it neurotically tries to protect, defend, acquire, assault, does all sorts of things. That's what goes away. I'm sorry, next verse.
जलव्योम्ना घटाकाशो यथा सर्वस्थिरो ऋतः तथा जीवेन कूटस्थः सोऽन्योन्याध्यास उच्यते. As the akasha in a pot is concealed by the akasha reflected in the water with which the pot is filled, so kutastha is obscured by jiva. This principle is called mutual obscuring or superimposition.
Yes. So, back to the idea of the clay pot. If it's empty, no reflecting power. You fill it up with water. And Sanskrit gives us a little bit play of words here. We have two different words. We have space and we have sky. The word akasha means both. So in the empty clay pot, there is akasha, space. I fill the pot with water and it obscures the space in the pot. The space is still there. But what do I get? I get the reflection of the sky in the water. And so what he's saying, you can't see the space in the pot because it's filled with water. So also in my mind, when I'm filled with thoughting and feeling, and I want this and I hate that and I need to control this, that obscure, and then I think that's a real me. Just like the reflected sky. So what do I have to do to be able to directly apprehend the space inside the pot? Pour out the water. Oh, there's nothing in the pot but space. So open up your head and pour out the thoughts. Pour out the I-ness and my-ness. And then the real self is available for apprehension. Now, the space was always in the pot. The water did not displace the space. It just obscured it from my vision. Fascinating little metaphor. I've never seen this in any other scripture, but it's a good one. Going on.
Ayam jivo na kutastham vivinakti kadachana anadi pravivekoyam mula vidyeti gamyatam. Under the delusion of mutual superimposition of the jiva, under the delusion of mutual superimposition, the jiva cannot discriminate and realize that he is not jiva but kutastha. This non-discrimination is beginningless and is known as the primal nescience.
Yes. So, in my mind, in my intellect, from beginningless time, I thought I was a person, and that's unexamined. Now, this idea of beginningless has two meanings. One, it is sanatanam, ancient, primordial. From the beginning of time, I've been in spiritual ignorance. But there's a subtler meaning which we can use that has to do with my practice. When I am in that particular evolution of my sadhana, sometimes I know I'm coming, other times I'm all identified as Jim. I need to remember that ignorance is beginningless, and it's beginningless the same way a dream is beginningless. What do you mean, Jim? Dreams have a beginning. I went to sleep at midnight and I got up at 7. So somewhere in there, I had a dream. It was this morning, probably started just before I woke up. I know it must have started like around 6:45. No, that's not what we mean. What we mean is you never see the beginning of the dream in the dream. I like to say they don't roll the credits at the beginning of a dream. When you dream, what your mind creates is an assumed, unexamined cause and effect past. I never questioned, how did I get from my bed onto Castro Street? Never occurs to my mind. Does this make sense? So in that sense, a dream has no beginning. It's just going on, and it's like, okay, this is just a continuation of reality. Spiritual ignorance is the same. If something in the phenomenal world triggers a vasana, thunk, down comes the veil of spiritual ignorance. And I never see it happen. Swamiji used to jokingly say that at a camp, the delegates leave the Vedanta on their seats when they leave. He would have us all in samadhi, so clear. And then after 2 weeks, by the time the delegates got to their car, you've got me locked in. Why do you have your car? You know, gone. Ego right there. And we never see it happen. So how do I get out of it? Stay close to this maxim. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. If I feel like an individual, I'm in the dream. I'm in the delusion of ego. Stop it and drop it. Over and over and over again. Has to be more important than getting what you want. Has to be more important than being right. It has to be more important than protection, defense. Has to be more important than being successful at work. Has to be more important than anything. Remember who you are. Discriminate between the phony self, the counterfeit self, this pratibimba, this reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought, and the real I, that's that which is immovable like a ball.
So it seems like the corollary of this is also true, which is if you can see the formation of jiva happening, then you have a few moments to kind of, stop it from actually become concretized.
Yes, exactly.
So if you can see it form, then you're no longer deluded by it. Because
Exactly.
so it's not like it would never form. It's just that there's always this perception of it forming. So there's this ability to not be swayed by it.
Well, maybe not. But for now, if it's forming, do your best to see that it's not you. Maybe it'll quit forming. But let's leave that to God. Right now, work with what you have. Is that helpful? All right. One more.
विक्षेपा वृत्तिरूपाभ्यां द्विधा विद्या व्यवस्थिता न भाति नास्ति कूटस्थ इत्यपादनमावृतिः. Nescience or avidya has two functions: avarana, or the power to conceal, and vikshepa, or the power to project. The power of avarana creates such ideas as kutastha shines not nor exists.
Yes. So when I'm deluded, I have the non-apprehension of my essential nature. I do not think I am Brahman. I think if there is a God, it's out there. But most of the time, I don't even think that ground of being, I don't even think about, doesn't even exist. And then we'll do one more. The Ch.6 Shakti is creating all the Mishigas going on. Next one.
Ajnani vidusha prishta kutastham na prabhudyate na bhati nasti kutastha iti buddha vadatyapi. If a wise man asks an ignorant man about kutastha, he replies, "There is no such thing as kutastha. It does not manifest nor exist." Thus he feels and says.
Yes. So in our culture, if you were to say, do you know that the self in you is the supreme God? No, it doesn't exist. I'm a person. The only thing I need to know about God is I'm not it. God's Sky Daddy. So does the deluded person say. And very deeply spiritual people could say, "Oh, I am the handmaid of the Lord," quoting the Virgin Mary. "I'm a servant of God. I'm a channel of the infinite. God's out there." But the ground of being, it's Chidakasha, it's Kutastha, no notion that it exists. That's the Avarana Shakti. Okay, it's 9, and we'll take up the subtle ways in which the Vikshepa Shakti operates next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha.